morning, everyone. So today is 2 Kings chapter 8, verses 1 through 6. So in this story, we learn about this woman. So this woman, she listened to everything that Elisha basically told her to do. So she and her husband were godly, generous people who always helped Elisha the prophet. And during this time, Elisha told this woman in this story to leave Israel. Why? Because there was going to be a famine in Israel. I'm sure none of you know what a famine is, but a famine basically means when food supply is running short. So you start just running out of food and there's no food left to eat. And there was going to be a famine in Israel for 7 years. Now, can you imagine trying to survive for 7 years, Jaden, without any food? You can't eat your McDonald's for 7 years. What can you do? So this woman, she listened to everything that Elisha told her to do. And she was like, okay, so I will leave Israel for 7 years. And during this time, this woman, she had to give up all of the land that she owned in Israel. So everything that she owned, she just gave it up with no guarantee that she was going to get her land back. Yes, bah. So there was no guarantee that she was going to get all of her land back after returning from Israel after 7 years. So 7 years later, after this big famine was over, this woman returned to Israel and she tried to claim her land back. So she went to the king of Israel, and the king of Israel was asking Elisha, who is this woman? And everyone remembers Gehazi, the servant, the king's servant who had leprosy. Gehazi was telling the king, so this woman listened to everything that Elisha told her to do. Yes. So because of that, the king said, okay, give this woman back all of her land because she listened to the Lord's word. Now, let me ask everyone here, has your parents ever told you to do something that you just really didn't want to do? And they were like, okay, it's going to pay off with time. And then eventually, it did pay off. Has anyone ever had that experience? Raise your hand if you did. Peyton, has your parents ever forced you to do something, and over time, you think it actually paid off?
Yeah. I don't really remember what it was.
Okay, so yeah, very good. I'm sure we all have certain stories like that, where as long as we listen, it will come back to us. So let me tell you a story about when I was like in the 3rd or 4th grade. So during this time, I think most of you know what 한글학교 is, Korean language school. So I was born in America. So, I didn't know any Korean at that time. So my parents said, you need to maintain your culture, your heritage, so we need to send you to Korean language school. And during this time, I didn't want to go. I had no interest in learning Korean. I'm like, I'm in America. Why do I need to learn Korean, right? And when I was that age, I don't know if it's the same these days, but cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons, they were the most important thing to me. So from 7 in the morning until 12, all the best cartoons like X-Men, Spider-Man, Sonic the Hedgehog, I wanted to watch all of these cartoons. And my parents were like, James, you need to give up these cartoons because eventually the Korean language will pay you back in life. It will all pay off. And I didn't believe them. I'm like, what could possibly be more important than watching cartoons? So I decided to listen to my parents. I'm like, okay, I'll give up these cartoons. And I decided to study hard at 한글학교 for a couple of years. So later on in my life, after I graduated college, of course, the cartoons didn't come back to me. I didn't watch cartoons in college. Instead, some of you know this, I taught English in Korea from 2011 until 2012, and I worked at this English academy. So I decided to live in Korea for an entire year. And of course I was scared because, I had no experience living in Korea. I lived in America all my life. And that's when I was getting that Korean language. That's when it eventually paid off. I was like, wow, I'm actually not having any trouble living in Korea because I understood what everyone was asking me. I had no problems communicating. But there were other Korean Americans like me, other gyopos, during the Korean language school. And some of them didn't speak any Korean. Like one guy, he was like, hey, James, do you want to have some galbitang? And I was like, galbitang? What is galbitang? And I said, oh, you mean 갈비탕. 갈비탕. 갈비탕 is like beef short rib soup. So I'm like, did you ever learn Korean? And he's like, oh, yeah, my mom sent me, but I didn't try very hard. And I said, oh, okay, well, thank God I tried hard when I was younger. And this same person, he's like, hey, James, do you want to go to Gimbap Nara? I was like, what's Gimbap Nara? Kimbap Nara, okay. And then that same person, I heard him talking on the phone with his imo, his aunt. And so in Korea, we have something called honorifics, which means it's a way to speak to someone very respectfully. Why? Because they are older than us, and we should respect people who are older than us. So, we have like 안녕히 주무세요, which means like, sleep well. But he was talking to her in 존댓말, which is like, a very casual form of speech to his imo. So it's so disrespectful. He's like, imo, 네, 짤자, imo. And I was like, oh my God, this guy. So I was like, okay. So I think it eventually came back to me. All that hard work paid off. So in conclusion, everyone, as long as you listen to the Lord's word, as long as you listen to your parents and they tell you to do it, to try hard, and it's all going to come back to you, it will. Just listen to your parents and listen to the Lord's word.